Hello everyone, I'm Washburn, and today I'm going to be taking you through the process of making your very own Greek mask. First, I'm going to tell you what you'll need. Linen. I'm using pieces of cardboard, pre-cut thin pieces of wood, and some paint and felt and craft glue. So today we're going to be making a Greek tragedy mask. And the reason we're using these materials is because Brockett explains that all of the masks were made of linen, cork, or lightweight wood. For this reason, many of the masks did not survive from the 5th century Greek theater. None of the masks existed or survived to today, so we don't have any true authentic example of what they looked like, but we do have depictions on Greek vases and Greek paintings to give us an idea kind of how the tragedy and the comedy mask would have looked in Greek theater. Alright, so to save some time, I've already cut our mask out. I've cut the face of a shape, and I've cut the mouth hole and eye holes. So the mouth hole was important to Greek theater for a number of reasons. It allowed the actor to speak from it, but also the Greek masks had a tool in it that projected to the back of the theater. And in doing this, it allowed for the whole of the Greek audience to get the same experience, to hear. But the mask also served a purpose in allowing the whole of the Greek audience to see as well. The tragedy and the comedy masks both had very strong and dramatic expressions, and they allowed for the character to portray that expression throughout the show. In embodying the mask, Michael Lipman goes through a modern experiment of using masks in theater, and he explains how the masks let the actor transform their movement and their body language because they know what their face looks like. They don't have to focus on making the expression. And I think that this is true for Greek theater as well. So much of the expression was already done with the mask and with the detail of the mask that the actor could really express the emotion in their voice and in their body to match that of the mask. So I think that's one important part of Greek theater, and I think that an account from the actor Aesopus, a 1st century tragic actor who explained the mask and explained one of the performances he watched of another Greek tragic actor, and he said that he could see from behind the mask the weeping and the grieving as the actor spoke the lines. So it's very clear that the masks allowed for that emotional expression. Today I am going to make my mask angry. I'm going to make him a character that is seeking revenge or seeking to find out who has wronged him or find out why something is the way it is, but he's mad about it. And so that's what we're going to create today. So, in looking at that strong expression, I looked into the way the masks were made. And as I'm explaining this, I'm going to be adding some more of the facial structure, including the eyes, which would have protruded from the face, the a replica mouthpiece, a nose, and some eyebrows. So that's what I'll be doing as I explain the difference in comedy and tragedy masks. So in my research, I found that the comedy mask was very different from that of the tragedy mask, and the Encyclopedia Britannica explains how the comedy mask was almost grotesque in its depiction of the human face. It was very overwrought, overdone. It was highly unrealistic, and some accounts have called it ugly. But this is very, very different from that of the tragedy mask, which everything I've read has said either it has one emotion that it shows the whole time, but that it's stoic, but often they are the idealistic form. The face is made in a way that it is would have been pleasing to the Greek viewer of the day. So I thought in my original research I was kind of interested to see why this difference was. Why was it that the comedy mask would be so grotesque while the tragedy mask is beautiful? As I looked, I found that there's a difference in types of characters. Brockett explains the structure of the two plays, the subject matter, and he explains how many of the tragedies, yes, they were sad, and yes, they had characters that had undergone a great deal of misfortune, but often the character types were kings, queens, wealthy, heroic types, while the comedy and satire plays were much more lowbrow, if you will. They were characters that were slaves or everyday people or workers that were in kind of everyday settings with kind of whimsical or unrealistic situations, and that's what made them comedies. They were lighthearted in the fact that the situation was unrealistic or comedic, but the characters were often much more common or low class. So I wanted to see if the distinction between the two types of character, from high class, powerful, wealthy in the tragedy, and the low class kind of working class citizen of the comedy, if that is why the two masks were made the way that they were. And in my research I found that it seems to be very coincidental that the masks look the way they do because of the characters they depict and the structure of society. I found no really clear evidence that the masks were made the way they were for a social or specific purpose, but I do think it is interesting that the social structure of Greece was set up the way that it was, and I'm going to explain how that was. So basically, in my research, I found in the Athenian democracy and its slaves that there was a clear division between the ruling class and the wealthy, and the working class, and even the Greek slave. In depictions of the Greek slave that are shown in this work by Demetrius Karatatas, even the vase paintings of slaves that wouldn't have masks on are very similar to the way that comedy masks are depicted. And I think that this almost grotesque or ugly depiction relates back to the looking down upon of foreigners and slaves. Many Greek politicians didn't like the working class, and that's clear in the way that it's depicted on vases, and I think that carries over to the depiction of the low class or working class in Greek theater with the mask. In my research I found that even though we often hold Greece as the first democracy and hold it at that high standard of being very democratic, it was really more like an oligarchy in that it was a ruling class of wealthy landowners that made a lot of the decisions, and yes, there were votes that the whole of Greece could vote on, but for the most part it was a ruling class of a small select group of wealthy people. And I think it would be kind of the depiction of the wealthy in such an idealized way might reflect back to that those were the people that were in power at the time, the wealthy and the powerful landowners, which would kind of be similar to the kings and the queens of Greek mythology. So although there's no clear evidence or clear stating that the Greek comedy and tragedy masks are carried over from Greek social structure, I think that it could be connected. I mean, anytime you depict real life or characters from real life, the social structure and the social norms of the day are going to be become apparent in some way. I mean, they're gonna surface just because that's the nature of art. It's gonna reflect the the structure of the day, but I did not find any evidence that explicitly stated that. So, to summarize my research, I found that the Greek mask was both very useful in storytelling and creating character, that it had a very clear expression to it, a very clear, created a very clear character. Those characters differed between tragedy and comedy. For comedy, the characters were more low class, more working class, more common, and their depiction was often much more grotesque and ugly with the mask. For tragedy, on the other hand, it was more heroic, wealthy, powerful characters that were portrayed beautifully with stoic, idealized masks. I found that this does not directly relate to, but it may reflect the social structure of the day and the feelings toward working class citizens from upper class Greeks and the oligarchy that ruled the democracy of the day. So, all that being said, this is my Greek mask, once again made out of linen, light wood, and cardboard, and it is an angry mask with the protruding eyes, mouthpiece, protruding wooden features. Much of the Greek mask would have been painted further to give more detail, to exaggerate the features even more. Obviously this is not exactly true to what the Greeks would have used, but I think it would be pretty close in its depiction of the face and the facial features, and that it's made of linen. So that's all I have for you today, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.